this panel is going to give us a perspective on some of the things that are being done in Maryland in terms of early childhood, looking at how do we advance the profession. I think most of you know our panelists, but I'm going to take just a couple minutes to introduce them. The name of the panel is How Does It Work in Maryland? How does early childhood work in the advancement of practitioners into what we hope ultimately will be a real field of practice. Steve Rohde is Deputy Director for the Resource and Referral Service for the Maryland Family Network, as well as the Program Manager for the Maryland Child Care Resource Network. Steve has been a preschool teacher, a child care center director, child care specialist, an administrator with municipal and county licensing, a trainer, and an instructor in the university setting. Steve has a bachelor's and a master's degree from Towson. Steve will be reviewing the history and the components of the Core of Knowledge, how it aligns with the Maryland Child Care Credential, and how it aligns with Stacie's morning thesis. Dr. Terry Bridger, who's chairman of the Department of Teacher Education at Prince George's County Community College. Terry's past experience is very vast, and it includes being the director of the Master's Certification Program at the University of Maryland College Park. She's been a general ed and a special ed teacher in both public and private schools at all levels. She's been a public school administrator as well as a consultant. Terry has a bachelor's degree in special and elementary ed, a master's degree in multicultural education and curriculum development, and a PhD in education leadership and teacher training. Terry will be discussing the role of the community colleges in assisting child care professionals to advance their skills and knowledge. Janine Backey, our last presenter this morning, is the director of the Division of Early Childhood Programs in the Montgomery County Public Schools. Janine has been an early childhood teacher, a resource teacher, an ESL coordinator, an assistant principal, and an early childhood supervisor at the Prince George's County School Systems. Janine is a graduate of Bowie State and the University of Maryland College Park. Janine will be sharing information about the Montgomery County Public Schools partnership that supports teacher certification, and in particular, the para-education program in MCPS that allows the early childhood classroom paras with a cohort to obtain a bachelor's degree with on-site internships in student teaching. We think it's the only one in the state
Some of the
that's
partnerships
doing
are
that.
the only ones.
Terry has, Janine, I'm sorry. Following each of the panelists' presentation, there will be a time for them to have a discussion up here, and we will invite you to offer questions to them, and we will be following lunch after this presentation. So let us start with Steve.
Thank you. And thank you to MSDE and the many partners in this. This is a fabulous conversation that we need to have as a profession. As Louise mentioned, I was asked to talk about core of knowledge, and though many people have an understanding of core of knowledge as a general conceptual framework, as I read Stacie's book and as I thought about the development of the core of knowledge, it became clear that having a little better sense of the history of it would help people, and also aligns in part with what Stacie has suggested in terms of the conversations that need to occur. So the next three slides are not of the highest quality, but they come from a report called A New Beginning. And A New Beginning was done in 1993. It was a group that was convened by the then Maryland Committee for Children, the predecessor to Maryland Family Network. And it included a lot of people from various parts of our field. It included higher education, state agencies, professional organizations, including the Maryland State Child Care Association, the Maryland State Family Child Care Association, Child Care Resource and Referral, Head Start, Military Child Care, and as I mentioned, Maryland Committee for Children. I've tried to look at everybody in the audience today, and there are at least two people who were part of that. Liz Kelly, who is sitting somewhere on the left-hand side here, was one of the members of that, and then Margaret Williams, the current executive director of Maryland Family Network, was another who's still currently active in the field. There she is. At that time, the group recognized that the system was organized around a relatively unintegrated system of workshops, courses, and seminars available to child care professionals just to meet basic requirements, licensing requirements. And it typically did not lead to any kind of forward movement in a career path. Such an unintegrated system of workshops, courses, and seminars led to, and I like this word, the accumulation of scattered information rather than the acquisition of a core of knowledge, which could and should constitute the basis of a shared content for practitioners in the field of early care and education. It sort of reminds me, down by the prison in Baltimore, there's a place called I think it's called the Dog Shop, and the Dog House, and the phrase above it that is partially relevant to this is it says, "Our meatloaf is made, not accumulated." So that accumulation in terms of the courses is very similar and perhaps in some ways not as appetizing as you would like it to be. There was lacking a systematic agreed upon policy and procedure for the articulation of pre-service and in-service trainings, continuing education courses, 2- and 4-year degree programs, and other training educational opportunities. Well-formulated articulation procedures were needed to enhance the available options for specific credential paths and/or academic matriculation over time. And perhaps Terry will talk about some of the paths that are available now. And such articulation pathways need to be explicit so that people understand it very clearly and understand what they need to do, and need to be part of a coherent system in place for making career choices. So here's a New Beginning cover. This is a career lattice that was put together by the group. And again, it was a consensus group. And what they looked at, if you look at the very bottom level, is what are those pre-service requirements that can accelerate one towards higher levels. And within this setup, and you can't read this very well, I do apologize. The only way we could get this readable is someone actually took a picture of the book with a camera phone and we uploaded it. The scanners wouldn't work. But what it does is it gives you an idea of what the group at the time thought in terms of how to get people looking at this as a career path, not just as something that they're going to do. And then likewise, there was a much more explicit, this is probably the most illegible part of this, a much more explicit path in terms of at different levels, here's what people need in order to move through the field. So moving from an aide to an assistant to a teacher to a classroom, a master teacher to a director. And then other career opportunities were also discussed and mapped out. Child care resource and referral, protective services. So it was a very elaborate suggested pathway at the time. And I thought it was helpful, what I just mentioned in terms of the unintegrated system, because 8 years later, the National Research Council came up with a similar conclusion. It's a patchwork of pre-service and in-service opportunities, most often characterized by poorly designed and uncoordinated workshops and conferences. And then likewise, and this is from another book, that teacher education is best done when it's context sensitive, connected to real life and teaching and learning situations, ongoing rather than disconnected, cumulative in its intentions, reflective, and knowledge-based, which is what we're trying to do. So the Core of Knowledge in Maryland was adopted about a dozen years ago. It was part of the effort to look at the Maryland Child Care Credential. There are 6 areas within the Core of Knowledge. You can see them here. I'm not going to read all the way through. I think one of the things that Pam mentioned on the previous panel, how child development has to be a central part of that, and that certainly is clear with the Core of Knowledge here. So the Core of Knowledge in Maryland, all workshops, pre-service, in-service workshops need to be aligned with this. They need to be explicit in terms of what they're covering. And in addition to this categorization, there are also 3 levels that people look at: beginner level, intermediate level, and advanced level, so that people doing training, doing professional development, identify what it is they're trying to reach in terms of an audience, what the content is, and people can make selections from that. Now, the Core of Knowledge and the system that it's in, as it says here, designed to ensure that Maryland's child care professionals receive ongoing in-service development in all content areas, as opposed to just taking courses or workshops that they're comfortable with it provides a framework so people can get a broader understanding of the field. Child care professionals are encouraged to meet the Maryland Child Care Credential by accessing these Core of Knowledge courses. And the Core of Knowledge courses actually go beyond the continued training that is still part of the licensing requirements, and at the time, again, a dozen years ago, was the primary means that people used. So there's a higher level of trainer qualifications for this. There is approval for the trainers because 15 years ago, you were approved sort of in a blanket fashion rather than specific to each workshop, which is now what the system is. And then the big plus with the new system and the Core of Knowledge is that there has to be an assessment as part of that workshop. People have to show that in addition to sitting for 3 hours or whatever, they also need to be able to explain the content. Oops. Forgive me. So this is also probably unreadable from where you are, but what it does is it describes the Maryland Child Care Credential System. And this is a much more explicit system. This really does align with the work that was done by A New Beginning by outlining what is needed at each level. And the added plus to the Maryland Child Care Credential System is there is a bonus given from level 2 to level 6, and level 4 plus and above actually gives an annual bonus as you progress through the system. So there's an incentive beyond just that people need to be lifelong learners, that the profession changes and we need to keep up with the changes in the profession. So for the conversation, I have a couple recommendations, but I'm going to hold off on that until the questions and the conversation. So,
Thank you very much. We'll just move on to Terry and then Janine, and then we'll stop and give you an opportunity to ask questions or continue the conversation. Terry?
Hi. Thanks again for having us here. I don't know how many of you are involved more at the state level than you are at the national level, but I think one important point to note is a lot of the things that Stacie's bringing up in her book, Maryland either already tackled or is already beginning to tackle. So I think we're in a really good place to be able to look at what needs to be done to unify the field so that the rest of the country can sort of see a model. When I go to national conferences, there's not as high of standards in many states as there is in Maryland. And that's true both at the non-credit side and the child care side as well as on the teacher preparation side. And so I think it's really important that we acknowledge that we have credentialing. Right now it's voluntary. And I think it's a really good basis for us to start with and look at how can that be broadened so that we can really look at unifying the field and looking at how we can move people up the ladder to being more and more professionally trained. As you heard, I'm at Prince George's Community College in the Department of Teacher Education. And the community colleges are really key to sort of helping bridge that piece between the non-credit side and the credit side. And one of our roles is how do we move people as they enter the profession. Many times it makes sense for them to enter on the non-credit side, but then what can we do is over time they want to enter the credential program, they want to move up, they want to get a different position. So how can we move them so that they can keep building on their level of knowledge and their professionalism, their skills, and move up to wherever it is they want to be. I don't think that the role of teacher education is that everybody needs to have a teaching degree in the field of early childhood. Again, that's something that would be discussed way above my pay grade, but I think that we need to talk about what are the levels for different positions, what are the needs of professionalism, what are the needs of skills and knowledge, and then are there ways to do that besides getting a 4-year degree? One of the conversations that we always have is, are we going to price ourselves out of the field? Because getting a 4-year education is very expensive, especially if you're working full-time, you have a family. It takes a long time. I mean, our programs are 2 years at the community college, and my average graduate graduates in 5 years with a 2-year degree. And that's because they usually take 2 classes at a time, sometimes 1 class at a time, and they may not go summers. So, I think we need to think about all of these pieces. I think we have lots of pieces. It's how do we move it together? So on the college side, we have the non-credit, and that is where anybody can come and take the 90-hour certificate. They can take CPR. They can take any of the core of knowledge workshops that colleges offer, and they do vary from college to college. All the community colleges have the basic non-credit courses, the 45-hour infant and toddler, 45 school age, 90 hours, etc. And again, you can get so far up doing that. But then students want to come to the credit side. They want to move up. They want to be a director. And in the state of Maryland, you have to have that 2-year degree or a 4-year degree in something else, and then some classes in early childhood. So how do we move them across that bridge? Well, we have, across the state, we have something called challenge exams. And these are exams that are in the 4 basic areas of early childhood non-credit. The 2 pieces of the 90 hours, the child growth and development, and then it may be called methods and materials or curriculum activities. Those are the 2 that make up the 90 hours, the infant and toddler and the school age. Any college, any 2-year college in Maryland that has any of those 4 classes also offers what's called the challenge exam, that somebody who meets the criteria for that can come in and try to get college credit for that particular course. We have set standards in place, but then every college has additional, or they can have additional requirements that they need. Everybody has to have a minimum of 50 multiple choice questions that have to align with the course outcomes of the course, and basically we all have the same outcomes across the state. And they have to get at least an 80%. They can only take it once. And then other colleges require other things. You have to be enrolled in the degree program. You have to show proof that you've had the non-credit version of this class. You may have had to work a certain number of years in the field. Some colleges require prior courses. If these are not their basic courses, they may require portfolios, etc. But if the college has all 4 of these classes, somebody can come in and get 12 credit hours towards their college degree for the AAS in child care. So that's one way that we work to try to get students to come onto the credit side. We also have what's called prior learning, and it goes by different names at different community colleges. But these are really with people who have a certain number of years in the field. It varies by college, but it's typically 5 to 10 years in the field. And then they take a portfolio class many times, or they have to meet certain expectations so that they show that they know how to build a portfolio. And they have to meet the course outcomes through showing that they can meet the knowledge base as well as the skill based. And usually the portfolios may have a test with them for the knowledge base, or they may just have to outline what they know. And then there's almost an authentic portfolio piece where they show samples of work. So depending on the college, again, they can get a certain number of credit hours for that if they meet that criteria, so that they can use some of that for their degree program. Some colleges offer what's called concurrent enrollment, so that you can enter a class that has both non-credit and credit students in it. It's taught by a credit instructor. You can pay at the non-credit rate, and then you only have till a certain date to decide if you want to pay the extra amount to go to the credit side. That works well when the entrance requirements are the same for non-credit and credit students. But at a lot of community colleges, it's different. So the non-credit students may not necessarily be able to meet the criteria for being a credit student. But some colleges do have that. We also, at my college, we had what was called a transition course. And what we had found is that the challenge exams were very difficult for students to pass because they didn't know the theory parts of our courses, because that may not be what you get on the non-credit side of the course, and it's certainly not something that you're really concerned with on a day-to-day practical level in your classroom or with your children. So we developed a 1-credit class that students could take to learn the parts of the 90 hours that were theory-based that they would not necessarily have gotten on the non-credit side. And then as part of that course, we gave them the challenge exams. And we found that our rate went from about a 10% pass rate to up to an 80% pass rate. Many of you may be familiar with the old infant and toddler grant that the state had that paid for non-credit and credit classes up to 90 hours in infant and toddler. I see some heads nodding, yes. Well, that grant, we had permission for the transition class to be included in that payment. So we had the class stacked. Well, once that grant ended and went only to credit courses, then we've not been able to run it since. We've canceled it several times. But it's something we keep revisiting to kind of bring back. And I think that classes like that may be very helpful to help bridge that gap of knowledge from the non-credit to the credit side, so that they can look at the theory and then move it into the practice. The final thing that we do for the non-credit students is we have a lot of certificate programs, and these are through the Maryland Higher Ed Commission. So they are college credits, and they typically range from 12 credits to 30 credits. Anything that's 18 credits or more is eligible for financial aid. And so those students can take in particular areas. So we have one in infant and Todd, we have one in school age, we have one that helps paraprofessionals move up in Prince George's County in their positions in the schools. But they're only early childhood classes. So the students don't have to take math, they don't have to take science, they don't have to take English. They do have to pass the reading placement exam. Or whatever other requirements. Sometimes it's English depending on the class. But that helps those that are really nervous about coming to the credit side, mostly because of the math and science, let's be honest here. And so we're all a little nervous in education. If we're not secondary math and science, none of us like math too much. And so they're a little nervous about bridging that gap. And this allows them to do that. They get success, they do well, and then they say, hey, now that I've got the certificate, I can do the whole program. And all of the credits will roll over into their associate's degree programs. So every college varies by what kinds of certificates they have. We have several at my college, and I get a lot of non-credit students who that's how they begin their program. We also have people that just are in the field that don't want the full degree, but they just want, we have one that's proficiency in working with special needs children. And so we have people that just want that 18 credit certificate so that they feel more comfortable about including children with disabilities in their classrooms and in their homes. So we have that. And then, of course, we have degrees. We have the Associates of Early Childhood, which in many colleges is called an AAS. And then we also have the AATs. And the AATs are the streamlined way to transfer to a four-year program in teacher education. They both have general requirement classes, and they both have early childhood classes. The difference is the AAS has more early childhood and less gen eds, and the AAT has more gen eds and less early childhood classes. Students can transfer with either degree, but with the AAS, not all their early childhood classes are going to transfer. For example, we offer program administration. No four-year college is going to accept program administration of child care centers for a teacher ed degree. So there's some classes that just aren't going to transfer, and they will not have enough math and science. Currently in Maryland, our undergraduates need 12 credits of math and 12 credits of science. And so that's what's built into the AATs for transfer. So we have those degrees. Some colleges also have AA degrees in education, and those are for people that want the degree, but they don't necessarily want to go into a teacher ed program, or they're transferring out of state. So they don't necessarily need the same requirements that Maryland requires. And some colleges offer that just as a pathway so that they can start at the community college and then transfer. So we have a lot of pathways. At most of the colleges, you'll find the non-credit and the credit sides work very closely together. And so one of the things that Louise had asked me to do was to come up with a worksheet, a handout that had all the contact information for all the community colleges, both for the departments of education or teacher ed, as well as just the general how to apply. So we do have that. I'm actually doing a session this afternoon which will talk in more detail about some of this and in a lot more detail about the AAS and the AAT programs. So even if you're not coming to my session, if you want the handouts, they'll be in whatever room we're in.
Right.
And are they going to be available afterwards too?
I'm listening to John. That workshop is next door, is that correct? On our,
Oh, okay.
on our right.
Over there.
Yes.
So, feel free to come over and stop, or you can find me at the college, and I'll be happy to help you out. The last thing I'd just like to say is that the community colleges are part of the Child Care Professional and Career Development Program. And many of you have heard of it. It's the CCC-PDF grant. And that is through MSDE. It's what the old infant and toddler grant was, and then it segued. And Vanessa Jones, who I saw earlier, was here. There she is over there. She is the grant director for the state for MSDE. And most of the community colleges have that. And it's a wonderful program. Once they're admitted to the college, it pays for all of their books, fees, and tuitions to get that 2-year degree. And there are requirements to get into it. You have to belong to the Maryland Credential Program for one, and you have to apply by March 1st in order to get in for the following fall. But most of the community colleges have that. We work very closely with credentialing and with Vanessa to get students into that program, but it's been a real success story. There are some 4-year partners as well, so students who leave the 2-year programs and graduate can go to one of the partner colleges of the 4 years, and the money moves with them. The community college doesn't keep it. So in our case, we have several students who got the AAS, took their extra math and science courses with us, and now they're at 4-year colleges working on their 4-year degree. So I think the community colleges are a really important piece in helping look at a unified pathway for early childhood in the state of Maryland. So thank you very much for letting me tell you about this.
Thanks, Terry.
Thank you.
And all of the PowerPoints and all of the materials, the one that Terry
Yeah, that might
mentioned,
help
will
with
be
research,
posted
thanks.
on the Research Forum website.
Sorry.
In a couple days. All right, let's
I think
just
they
wait
said they were
one
gonna pull
moment.
it up.
There. This way she can see her presentation.
I'll start talking while they're preparing the slides.
Thanks, Denise.
This is just such a timely conversation because we've been having these conversations about workforce development and helping to get our teachers and other staff prepared, childcare, paraeducators, family childcare, for a long time. And there's been discussions and work groups at MSDE. I can recall being on the Commission on Childcare in Montgomery County and us talking about career ladders and helping to take people from the AAS and the AAT and sort of move them forward. Conversations within the school system, conversations with universities related to grants and helping people to get duly certified. But in particular, I remember the conversations at the Commission and talking about the long hours of the child care providers and how do we help people to be able to get the education and experience that they need and get the credentials that they need while they're also working very long hours, and for, the pay scales are very low, and then having limited amounts of time to work with their family and get other things done that they need to get done in their lives. So I'm going to just spend a little bit of time talking about sort of one slice of that, which is some of the partnerships that Montgomery County Public Schools has with higher education in Maryland that is going to help to build a strong early childhood workforce. And whether you are called a teacher's assistant or a paraeducator or assistant lead or co-lead or junior lead teacher, really helping to get everybody prepared and not just really seeing that lead teacher as the person with all of the expertise. So there have been some partnerships that have been in existence in the school system for about 25 years. Some different ones, some longer than others, but part of this really came about through the Board of Education's initiatives related to helping to make the school system a self-renewing organization and to help to people to sort of build their career ladders and increase their professional development. And so there are a number of programs that are put in place to help folks to move on to the next level, but to be able to work on these programs in a way that's really achievable with their work lives and their home lives. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of those partnerships, what they have included, and how they're helping some of our paraeducators, subs, and other teachers move forward. Okay. So we have a number of partnerships that will help to build a high-quality early childhood workforce, and really for early childhood and primary into the elementary grades. We have formal memorandums of understanding that include expectations and responsibilities of the universities and MCPS. And you heard Terry talk a little bit about some of those partnerships in Prince George's. The students or our employees may be eligible to receive tuition reimbursement if they're actually employees, but in order to receive reimbursement in these partnerships I'm going to talk about, for undergraduate degrees, they must successfully complete the courses and earn a C or better. For graduate coursework, they must successfully complete the courses and earn a B or better. They're responsible for purchasing their own books and materials, but some universities waive student activity and library fees, and I understand that the University of Maryland is one that has done such. Teachers who would take the Praxis Content Area exam to become highly qualified can also apply for reimbursement through MCPS teacher tuition programs. And some of the supervising on-site teachers that work with paraeducators and others becoming certified also receive a weekly stipend. So there's been a financial and otherwise a strong investment in really helping to support employees, to help them to get the necessary credentials that they might need in order to move on to the next level, but to really ensure that they have the necessary background, training, and education to really help support our students in their care and achievement. The bachelor degree programs, there's a partnership with Montgomery College. It focuses on elementary or early childhood education and prepares individuals for entering a 4-year bachelor's degree program. And this is really targeting employees that have less than 60 credit hours. So they're working towards an Associates of Arts in Education. And often we have paraeducators or others, maybe they might be substitutes in the classroom, who have started to take some college coursework, and for some reason they were not able to continue on to do that. So it's kind of looking at people at different stages. So if you have less than 60 credit hours, you can enroll in this program to work towards your Associates of Arts in Education with a goal of working towards a bachelor's degree. Washington Adventist University, which was also formerly known as Columbia Union College, there's also a partnership there, and it provides the second 2 years of the bachelor's program. It's designed for people seeking a BA degree in early childhood or elementary and special education. The paraeducators actually do job-embedded internships. So they're coming to work every day. They're working in the classroom with students. They're being supervised by a certified teacher, but they're also having an opportunity to get internship or credit hours for that as well. They're eligible for tuition reimbursement, and the first cohort began in 2005. So if you have an associate's degree or you have at least 60 credit hours going forward, you're eligible to participate in this program. You're eligible for a bachelor's degree. You can become certified by MSDE in early childhood or elementary education, and you will almost be guaranteed employment as a contracted teacher. Every 2 years, there's a cohort of 10. And although there have been different budgets that have come forward, the recession and other issues, these programs and investment have really continued over the years. So it's really an important investment that has continued. Partnerships with Johns Hopkins University for staff that have a bachelor's degree and they've had a GPA of at least a 3.0. It's called the SEDIT program for Special Education Teacher Immersion Training. And often we hear a lot about moving forward with early childhood programs, but we need to really be talking about how some of these programs can start to make sure that teachers are really have the training and background necessary to work with all of our children. So children with disabilities, English language learners, really kind of having the background and understanding of working with children in poverty. And so many of these programs are really looking at combining these certifications. I know there may be a project coming, a newer project out of the University of Maryland that's looking at the dual certification issues. Because if our goal is to really have more children included and to have more settings be able to work with children from a variety of backgrounds, then we really need to make sure that everybody is prepared to meet the needs of all of our students. So for career changers and support staff seeking to be special ed teachers for students with mild to moderate disabilities, they're employed as special education paraeducators or assistant teachers. They work in 2 schools at either elementary, middle, or high school and complete 2 formal job-embedded internships. To date, there have been 122 graduates of this program. And if you think about working for a full day and then going to take coursework and then maybe having to leave a job in order to complete your internship requirements, when it's job embedded, it really allows you to do that without losing pay. There's a ProSEMS, Professional Immersion Special Education Program as well, a partnership with Hopkins. This is for non-certified teachers and current employees who may be substitutes, paraeducators, or have other support staff roles. They have to, the MCPS staff will have a BA degree and a GPA of at least a 3.0. It's a 2-year program, and upon completion, they'll be eligible for a master's degree in special education, certification in special education, but in this program, they have to agree to 3 years of employment in the school system. So there's an investment by the school system in this particular program, but then the employee has to come back and make a commitment to serve the students in the county. Okay, and then Towson University. There's a Master's of Arts in Special Education and K-12 certification. It's a 2-year program. Every 2 years, there's a cohort of 10 teachers. And upon completion, students or staff are eligible for a master's degree in special ed, certification in special ed, and employment as a teacher in the school system. The University of Maryland also has the SITE program for employees with a bachelor's degree who are not certified teachers. They have to have a GPA of 3.0, and they have to have completed and successfully passed the Praxis 1. When they complete the program, they're eligible for a master's degree in elementary education and MSDE certification. They work as paraeducators for 2 years in an elementary school and complete 2 formal job-embedded internships. In addition to the salary and benefits, they're also eligible for tuition reimbursement, and the whole program would be about 37 credit hours. The program was established in 1988, and more than 100 candidates have successfully completed it.
That's the program I used to direct at the University of Maryland. And it was actually the very first partnership program, which was brought together because MHEC and MSDE wanted to explore this with teacher ed in 4-year colleges. And so they really went to the University of Maryland and said, would you be willing to do this? So a lot of these programs are based on the SITE program.
Mm-hmm. There are also other career enhancement programs, and really I just kind of shared a piece of the higher education partnerships that are really going to help folks to become teacher leaders in early childhood or elementary education if they want to work with children in the primary grades. But also there are other career enhancement programs in the following areas that you see. It depends on your degree, it depends on your GPA, but there are opportunities to get additional endorsements or credentials in some of these other areas that are listed here. So if you think about a teacher that might be certified in early childhood education, but they also want to get additional certification in special education or working with English language learners, there's some opportunities for the system, for their employee to invest in them and to support them as they get the additional certification. And ultimately, it's good for everyone because they're better able to meet the needs of students and support student achievement when they have the education background and training that's going to allow them to work with a diverse group of students. Additionally, there's a leadership development program where employees can get additional certification and endorsements in educational leadership and administration and supervision. And if you'd like more information about this, you can contact Inger Swimson, who is the director of the Department of Certification and Continuing Education, and there's a link there as well. So if you see some of these programs and you think they might be good in your jurisdiction, then maybe that's the conversation that you want to go back and have, and maybe ask your system to invest in the employees. I know that there are a number of paraeducators and other folks that I'm aware of who started in classroom positions, who were working as assistant teachers or paraeducators, came into the classroom to become a teacher, also some who then moved on to administrative or other roles. But these types of partnerships really gave them an opportunity to work while learning at the same time, and then some opportunities to sort of subsidize some of the costs of continuing their education. So when we invest in employees and folks, we're really investing in children as well. So I just want to encourage you, if you don't have a program like this, please go back to your system. Don't say Janine sent you. But say, I've heard about this program, and one of the other things that I just want to point out is when I thought about these conversations that we were having when the Preschool for All program came in place, and there was a state task force that looked at the feasibility of preschool, and one of the key issues that kept coming up was about the child care teachers and child care assistant teachers and the salaries and the differences in the salaries and increasing requirements, and then how would folks be able to go back to school or get these things done. And one of the good things that I thought was built into that program was that there was an opportunity to write into the grant for a salary differential or additional cost to help to subsidize the cost of the lead teacher or other paraeducator's salary, because sometimes folks want to get the additional educational credentials and then they might leave childcare and go to the school system where they feel it might be more financially beneficial or for benefits or other reasons. But if we can work to continue to sort of level that playing field and really pay people a living wage to take care of our most precious assets, then really we can look more at the system as a whole rather than just in this community, because we're hearing about different programs at the state level, at the national level, and really all of us are going to have to take a part in helping to nurture and care for our children and to educate them. So we've got to really be thinking across the board. So I would encourage you to, those of you that are working in individual organizations, to find out information about the other entities that are working with young children and be able to help to advocate for those other entities. And I find that when we all unify together, when we've come together, we've sort of built a coalition in Montgomery County, we're able to leverage our political and other power at a much higher level because everyone is on the same page, whether it's home visiting or subsidy costs or other things. So we've got to really be thinking about how our children are going to be served in all of the settings and what it's going to take to prepare everyone that's going to be educating, nurturing, and caring for young children. Thank you.
Thank you. We've been given a wonderful overview by Steve and Terry and Janine. Closing comments, I think, Steve, you mentioned that you wanted to make some comments.
Well, if appropriate to the conversation, I think there are several things that the work on a new beginning and what Stacie has put in her book, I think it gives us an idea of a way that we can continue to have that conversation very specifically to the profession. But I think there are some other pieces to this that can be part of this larger conversation. I like the idea about the resources in terms of living wages, because we do, Maryland Family Network does a publication called Child Care Demographics, and we talk about the relative salaries of people who work in child care versus public school teachers. And there's quite a very big gap between people who work in child care and people who work in public schools. And in some instances, because there's a degree involved, you understand it, but in many other instances, they're very similar in terms of what they do. I think we need to continue to look, and this was part of the previous panel, what research is telling us in terms of teacher preparation as well as what goes on in the classroom, and find a better way to get that across in all the levels that we've talked about, whether it's pre-service, whether it's in-service, whether it's college level and beyond. And again, I think the funding issue is huge. And I was in a symposium last week with the National Women's Law Center, and one of the things that came up that I thought was really quite telling, they've done an average of what, across the nation, what the average child care subsidy is. And the average child care subsidy is $5,600 for child care. Then they talked about the discrepancy between child care subsidy and the expectations and what other programs were funded at. And just as an example, the average, and again, this is a national average, the average for Head Start in terms of a Head Start staff, a slot, is $12,500. So if we know that good results come from high quality early education and care, then I think we need to provide more resources. In addition to, as a profession, we need to look at ourselves, but certainly ways that government, federal, state, local, there really needs to be more attention to that. And one way to do that, which we've been pushing lately as an organization, Maryland Family Network, is the diverse delivery of pre-K services, so that high quality early care and education, whether it's child care centers, family child care, can access some of that funding. I think that would help equalize it and help make people more amenable to some of the things that we've talked about.